Print out the template and get scissors. Cut off the excess areas on the edges. It doesn't have to be perfect, just try to stay along the lines as much as you can. Be careful to avoid paper cuts. Once everything is cut out, you can fold it in half. After you've folded it in half, fold it in half again. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be done. After you folded it in half, that's it. If you don't have a printer, you can do this with a plain piece of paper. Fold it in half, and then fold it in half again. Then fold it in half, open it, and fold each corner to your center fold. And then you can open that up. Get a pencil and draw lines at the folds. You should have 3 lines. Estimate the center and draw a short line. Mark the first one A, mark the first box 1, second one 2, third one 3, fourth one 4, and this last one G. So this is what it should look like. Now we're going to fold it into thirds. Open it up, and you're going to draw lines, just the 2 along the thirds, and then again on that middle fold. Then estimate halfway between each of those lines. We'll do our line at the bottom again, mark the one at the top A, and then each one of these lines alphabetically down the center till we get to G again. And this is what that should look like. If you did a printed version, you can see how they match up. So you can either print it or you can make one yourself. Either way, it'll work. So I picked a few colors. Not all of yours have to be the same as the ones that I picked, but I picked pink, purple, a lighter pink, black, white, yellow, brown, a turquoise, and now I am taking my special ruler and getting ready to sketch out what I'm going to paint. I have some water, a pencil to help me sketch out things. I have this flat brush, a smaller brush, and I have this bigger brush. Now, you may not have this, you don't have to have it, but I use it for the background. And I also have like a paper plate that I'm using to put the paint on and mix my colors together. So I take my ruler and I put the A at the corner of my canvas. This is an 8 by 10 canvas. So I put the A at the top corner, and then the letter G is at the bottom corner. And I put a little dot right here by the D. Then I move my ruler all the way to the other side and do the same thing. So then I go over to the other side again and I flip the ruler over, okay? So now you see that there's more numbers than letters. And I put the top corner of the ruler to match the top corner of the canvas. And I put a little dot right there between the segment 3 and segment 4. Then I move to the other side of the canvas and I do the same thing. Again, put a little dot right there between the 3 and the 4. So now I have 4 dots that kind of make a trapezoid of sorts. And then I just use the ruler that I made to draw lines between those. Those don't have to line up any specific way. You just kind of make the dots connect with a line. So then we're going to draw this third line. Now, once you've drawn the third line, go ahead and get your paper plate or any kind of plate, anything that's kind of round that you can use to draw this next part. So this is the cupcake part, and you'll just be going a little bit below the dots that you have created there. And then you kind of use it as like a little stencil just to get a round surface. You can use a saucer, a dinner plate, pot lid, your just anything that you have that can make that kind of a slightly round thing. So now we are going to make the cupcake paper. So you draw a line kind of below the cake part of the cupcake that we just did. And this does not have to be perfect. You can use the ruler if you want to, but I didn't. You can, and you know, mine's not going to be absolutely perfect. So, you know, just kind of have a good time. Nothing has to be, because it's your painting, right? Nothing has to be absolutely perfect. So I use my ruler for this part. Again, you don't have to. And I only use it to make the lines straight. It's not to make them even or anything like that. But I draw a line at each point. So at the lowest point and at the highest point of the cupcake holder, like the cupcake paper. So that I just draw the line kind of down to the bottom. And it does kind of have to be at an angle to make sure that they're, you know, not all going in the same direction, because, you know, a cupcake paper kind of flares out a little bit. So those lines aren't going to all be perpendicular. They're just gonna, parallel. So they're just gonna kind of, you know, move a couple degrees every time you make a new line. And that's it. So now you see, no, they're not perfectly even. They're not, you know, perfectly together, but it works. Okay, so now we have the cupcake and we have the paper. And now it is time to do the icing, which for me is the fun part. So what I did was I made a large parenthesis and then a small one, and then kind of drew a line in between them. And this is the great part about this, is these lines absolutely don't have to be straight. You want them to have kind of a wave to them. So under that, I connected the bottoms of the parentheses as well, kind of over top of the cupcake. Then I did it again, put a large parenthesis on the right this time, and then a small one on the left, connected them with a wavy line, and then did it again. So you're alternating the large parenthesis and the small one. So when I get to this third one, I connect it again, and then I do one last time, a small one, and then a bigger one. Oh wait, that's a little, I don't know if I love that, but you put a little wave at the top. I know, I said it didn't have to be perfect, but if I don't fix this, it's gonna bother me. So I kind of want mine to be in the center. But if yours isn't, it's still okay. It's whatever works for you. So I put a little wave at the top. There we go. All right, so now I'm done, but we gotta have a background. So what I'm gonna do is, I mean, you can do whatever kind of background you want, but what I'm gonna do is start with circles. Mainly because circles are pretty easy for me to draw. I don't mind them. So since it's a background, I like to kind of let, you know, the circles be behind the cupcake a little bit to let people know that it's an actual background, like the cupcake is in front of my background. So I just keep putting a couple little circles. One more for good measure. And that's it. So at this point, I'm going to get my plate and pick some colors to paint my background. Oh, this yellow's taking its sweet time, isn't it? Okay, so yeah, there we go. So I have some yellow. And this is the point where you might want to think about using a bigger brush if you have one. If you don't have a bigger brush, that's fine. You really can paint this with just the two brushes, the little flat one and the small one. You can do this entire thing if you want to. It just might take you a little bit longer. So I'm putting the yellow on. Now your background can be anything. It could be triangles, it could be stripes, it could be butterflies. You can do just one plain color. Like you don't have to go through all of this to do a background. But for me, this was you know, kind of simple. So since everybody's background might be different, I don't really have any instructions for you on this. You can do all sorts of things. You can do a gradient. You can do initials if you're giving this to somebody for their birthday. You could do numbers if you're giving it to somebody for a particular birthday. So, so yeah, just kind of enjoy yourself doing the background. Just pick whatever colors you'd like, pick whatever pattern you'd like, and just kind of go for it. So you see I've moved on to the bigger brush just to get this done a little more quickly. And I don't want you all to sit here and watch me paint this entire background because you don't need to do that, especially if you're doing your own style of background. So I chose the turquoise, and I just made sure I stayed outside of the lines when I did my background. But yeah, it's not super complicated. And there we go. So now it is time to paint the cupcake. So let's get some colors together. Now, your colors, again, do not have to be the same as mine. I'm kind of doing a chocolate cupcake, so the cake is kind of going to be brown. But you could pick whatever colors for the frosting. You can make it match your room if you're going to be hanging it up in your room. You could make it match the theme of somebody's birthday party. So if they're having yellow cake, make the cake yellow. They're having kind of a unicorn cake, you can make it rainbow. You can really do whatever you'd like. So here I have my brown and my white, and I'm just going to mix those together. I'm using the smaller brush because there's not a lot of area that I have to cover. It's not like there's a ton of detail, but the spaces are small enough that the smaller brush is probably going to be a little easier for me to do. So I've got most, yep, that's pretty much as mixed up as I need it to be. It's good enough. All right. So what I like to do is kind of go along my outlines first before I start filling things in. So I'm just kind of painting along the lines. So I've got the top of the cupcake done. Now I am going to just kind of go along and fill it in just a little bit. So I start by kind of cleaning up what I've already done, and then I get my flat brush, and this makes it a little easier when you have those absolutely straight lines to just kind of go in and fill in. So I put the flat part of the brush up against the straight lines, and it kind of does the work for me. You know, I don't have to figure out how to keep my hand steady enough to make those lines straight. I just let the flat side of the brush do all of that work for me. And if yours is a little like further apart, like a little closer together, and you can start with the flat brush, you don't have to fill it in, and just use the flat side of it, and then use your smaller brush if you need to get into those tighter spaces. but since I can't always keep my hand steady, for straight lines I love to use the flat side, or just use that flat edge to get done what I need to get done. All right, so there we have kind of a chocolate-ish cake, and I'll go back in and touch up some stuff. So here you see that I didn't paint exactly along that arch that we drew, because I want the frosting to look like it's kind of sitting on the cake. So it looks like there's a little empty space there, but we're gonna fill that in with our frosting color. So now it is time to paint the paper. And so you're gonna need 2 different shades of whatever color you pick. So if you choose a blue, you'll need a light blue and a dark blue. If you choose a purple like I did, and I only have 1 shade of purple, you'll need to make one a little darker than the other one. So I'm adding some black here to my purple, so that I can have a darker purple and a lighter purple. So I'm just going to mix these together using the flat brush again, because I have a lot of straight lines here, the lines that I'm going to try to keep straight anyway. So now I have a darker purple and a lighter purple. And you can kind of play with this to see how much contrast you want to have between the 2 colors. You can, if it's too dark, you can add some more purple to it. You could try to add some white to it, see what that does. But at the end of the day, we're just going to be having some fun. Now, it looks like I have missed a line here. So, and everybody makes mistakes. Or we just call them, what's his name call them? Happy accidents? Those of you who have been painting since the 70s, which is probably not anyone watching this, you know what I'm talking about. So I just added my line back in there. If you skipped a line, you can do the same thing. It's okay. So now I take my flat brush. I've cleaned it off a little bit. So I'm going to take that brush and I'm going to start with the lighter color. And I do that because the darker color is going to cover up anything you didn't want to happen. So I went ahead and started with the lighter color, and I'm using all of the flat parts of the brush to make sure I can get my lines as straight as I want them to be. So even here you can kind of dot it on using the flat part of the brush. It's surprising how straight you can get these lines by just letting your brush do all the work. So I'm alternating. Well, right now it looks like I'm just skipping a space. And again, still using the flat side of the brush to kind of do the work for me to get the line straight. And if your line's not straight, that's okay. You can always go back and change things or fix things when you add your darker color, because that's going to kind of sit on top of the lighter color that you used. So it's starting to come together a little bit and give you an idea of what everything is going to look like. I'm still letting my brush do all the work and help me get my lines as straight as I'd like them to be. Alright, so we skip ahead a little bit, and that's what it looks like once I have all of my lighter areas filled in. Now, everything's not perfect, but, you know, good enough. Now I am adding my darker purple. I like using the darker color to kind of fix up anything that didn't go right with the lighter color. Of course, I'm still letting my brush do all the work, so if there's any flat things that need to happen or any straight lines that need to happen, I use the flat side of the brush. So I'm just filling in all of the areas that I didn't do yet with the darker color. So we just keep alternating until all of the white spaces are filled in. So again, it doesn't have to be perfect. If you wanted it to be perfect, that's fine, but sometimes a little less perfect gives it some character, right? So now we have the fun part. It is time to do the frosting. So I have some pink. I've decided I'm going to do mine in pink. And then I also have a lighter pink. which I am going to make even lighter with a little bit of white. And also I'll have some white on the sides, and I'll show you how I give the frosting a little depth and a little shine using that white in a minute. So I'm using my flat brush again. And I'm going to take the pink. This is the darker pink. And go along those parentheses that I made. And then again, letting the flat side of the brush do all of the work. I'm going to follow along that cake. And don't forget to put the little dip in there that kind of shows that the frosting is sitting on top of the cake. Then I'm going to go around the small parenthesis again and let that very kind of sharp edge of the brush do the work for me. And then I'll just kind of keep going along, following the sketch that I did. And I'm leaving those white areas, and I'll show you what to do with those in a minute. So I keep doing that for all of the layers of icing or frosting. I don't know, what do you call that where you're from? Is there a difference where you're from for the icing or frosting? I kind of use them interchangeably. So you're still using your brush to go along the outsides and just kind of follow your sketch, and you're leaving the inside white or whatever color your canvas was. Some people have black canvases. I love those so much, but we're using a white one here. And then, like we've been doing, you use the shape of your brush to get those small spaces, like that top piece of your frosting. So now I am going to mix together my light pink and my white to make an even lighter pink. Now you can do this with whatever frosting color you have chosen. You may have purple or blue or red, orange. So you see that there's definitely some contrast there. You have a darker pink and then a much lighter pink. So we're going to take that lighter pink and start to fill in with the same motion that we used to do the outside. We're going to start to fill in those white spaces. And again, this doesn't have to be perfect, but it's just kind of giving a little depth to the frosting. And we're going to do it again for each layer of frosting. And you don't have to stress about this part. because you still have your dark pink, you still have your light pink. So if you've gone over a little too far, you feel, or you haven't, made your pink light enough, or you made it too light, you can always go back and make changes. And again, like I've been telling you, this is supposed to be fun. It is not supposed to be perfect. And it definitely doesn't have to be exactly what I've done. So now you're starting to see that the lighter color has given it a little depth, a little dimension. It kind of looks a little more 3D, not quite as flat. And you can kind of mix those together to give it a little, kind of like a gradient going from the dark to the lighter color in the middle of your sections. But you're really just using your brush to follow where the curves are. Now we have our smaller brush. And then on that smaller brush, we put a little bit of white paint so that we can start using that to kind of show the movement and give it a little accent to kind of show maybe the frosting is a little shiny. You can kind of see where the person who put the frosting on, like where they kind of swirled it a little bit. And here, you kind of do your own thing. You do what looks good to your eye. If you don't like the swirls that you made, you can take your pink paint and go back over it and do it again. But this again gives it more of a 3D dimension. You don't have to use as much white as I did. I kind of like having a little bit of extra dimension to mine. But you are the artist here, so you don't have to do anything the way that I do it. This is just kind of a guide. Now, if your white has gone over a little further than you'd like, again, you can just take your pink, go back over it, and make any changes that you want to make. I don't really like to call them corrections because you didn't do anything wrong. This is your artwork. So I think I'm pretty much done with the accents that I want to do on my frosting. And so now I think a good cupcake should have sprinkles. Now to do the sprinkles, I just got some other colors that I liked, the turquoise, the yellow, and some purple. And you can use whatever colors you want. I just used colors that I already had out. And I also kept the white. Got a little extra white on there, and I'll show you what I do with that. So I started with the turquoise. You can start with whatever color you'd like to start with. And I'm holding my brush kind of perpendicular to the canvas so that I can get really round dots. And I'm spacing those apart. The further I get down the cupcake, the further apart my sprinkles will be. So think about it. When you have a cupcake and you're putting sprinkles on it, you kind of start at the top, and what makes it to the outer edges, it makes it to the outer edges. But most of it's kind of concentrated on the top and in the middle. So I just sort of had my sprinkles do the same thing. So now I'm going to come in with my yellow and kind of do the same thing. I have the sprinkles more concentrated at the top, which means that they're closer together. I'm still holding my brush lightly and kind of perpendicular to the canvas so that my sprinkles can be round. And I have more of them concentrated at the top of the cupcake, and then it just gets kind of sparse as I get closer to the bottom. And you can use more than 3 colors. You can use as many colors as you want. You can just use 1 color if you'd like. You may decide that you're not even a big fan of sprinkles and you're finished at this point. That is also fine. So now I'm coming back in with my purple, doing the same thing, more concentrated sprinkles towards the top, still holding my paintbrush very lightly, perpendicular to the canvas so that it can make very easy and simple dots. And then of course, as I go further down, I have less sprinkles. Now it is time to give a little life to these sprinkles. Now remember I told you that we would keep a little white around. So I'm taking my white and kind of touching the corners of the sprinkles. And that's also giving the sprinkles a little depth. It's like it gives it a little shine. And again, you don't have to do this part. It's all up to you and what you want your cupcake to look like. So, as you can see, I've added some more accents with the white. I added some to the paper. You don't have to do that, but that's just something that I chose to do. And after that, I took some metallic paint and I used kind of a rose gold that kind of matches the brown of the cupcake. And I like to add metallic accents to it because it catches the light. So where I have the brown cake, I added the gold, kind of rose gold accents. And I also have some silver that I'm going to add in a couple of places because I want the light to catch the area that has my sprinkles as well. So I'm adding some little silver dots. And I'm even adding a little bit of silver where I added the white on the paper so that the light can catch that as well. Now, some of you may not be as extra as me. Some of you might not want to add all the metallics and the accents and the white, and you can stop wherever you feel satisfied with your painting. I also like adding accents because it kind of covers up some of the happy accidents. As you saw where some of my lines weren't necessarily straight or they weren't evenly spaced. My accents, I can just kind of put them in a more evenly spaced place. That way it kind of tricks the person who's looking at it into seeing exactly what I want them to see, because they're going to see my little accents first. So now I'm just going to kind of mess around with my background and make that a little more interesting. I'm not even really sure what the plan is here, but it's fun. That's the first plan, is to have a good time. So I felt like adding a couple of dots to these. I don't know if they're like turquoise bowling balls or bubbles. Not really sure. Balloons maybe that might be in the background. But this is a time where you kind of can play around with your background. You can add some extra things in and just kind of add some more personality to your painting. I'm going to continue to add some more dots here with various colors. I kind of kept to the yellow, purple, turquoise, and pink, but you can go crazy here if you'd like. You can add whatever colors you have that you haven't used yet that you really were looking forward to using, throw them in there on your background. And there you go. So for me, I'm all done. You may have some more that you want to add on. You can see the little shine that comes from adding the metallic paint. That's one of my favorite things. And that's it for me. I hope that you really, really love the artwork that you have created.